This is an RNZ podcast. No mai whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. I'm Sally Round.
Great to have your company. I'm Duncan Smith. Today, a country vet tells us how he fled Afghanistan over the mountains on horseback after 9/11.
We meet Pounamu Skelton, who's on a mission to help Maori grow their own food.
And later, we're headed to the foothills of the Tararuas, where a former dock ranger has put his conservation background to use on the family dairy farm.
We also have the winner of our recent competition for you later in the show. But first, to a roundup of the week's rural news from the RNZ Rural News Desk and Monique Steele. Monique, Fonterra is looking to sell off some of its businesses.
The dairy co-op's looking at full or partial divestment options for Fonterra Oceania, which runs brands like Mainland and Anchor, and also Fonterra Sri Lanka. The sale would include 17 manufacturing sites, 3 of which are here in Aotearoa. Chief Executive Miles Hurrell says they've already had interest from potential buyers.
While these are great businesses, ownership of them is not required to fulfil Fonterra's core function of collection, processing and selling of milk. We believe prioritising our ingredient and food service channels and releasing capital in our consumer and associated businesses would generate more value.
Lots of changes in the labour market too, with changes to work visas causing headaches for primary producers.
Yes, the country's wine growers are concerned that changes to the Accredited Employer Work Visa Scheme will impact their workforce and therefore future harvests. Last month, in efforts to tighten immigration, the government made a raft of changes to the scheme, including increasing requirements for those applying for low-skilled jobs especially, like meeting basic English language requirements. Nicola Crennan of New Zealand Wine Growers told the Primary Production Select Committee they're an industry which relies heavily on those vital extra hands during busy harvest seasons.
That visa is largely used by our industry to bring in international workers for a short period of time for vintage. The changes in the conditions mean that those vintage workers are seen as the lower skilled workforce, and so that means there's going to be some extra hoops for them to jump through.
Meanwhile, there's close to 1,500 Ni Vanuatu recognised seasonal employer workers stranded in New Zealand.
Well, there's no easy way for them to get home after Air Vanuatu went into voluntary liquidation. Many of their visas were soon to expire, and Immigration New Zealand says it's working on the problem. 80 RSE workers from Vanuatu are working on the Thomas Brothers orchards in Riwaka. Manager Steve Thomas says 30 are due to head home at the end of the month.
So we have human resources and pastoral care managers, and they are back and forth with travel agents trying to find other carriers to get back into Port Vila and different routes. And they're also just working through with immigration to try and see if they can get extensions to their visas.
And beekeepers say New Zealand needs a new approach to the American foulbrood disease.
Yes, honey producer Springbank Honey was ordered to burn more than 10,000 of its beehives and some equipment after the disease was found through spore testing. American foulbrood is spread by spores that can be viable for up to 40 years, and it's one of the most widespread and destructive diseases affecting honeybees. Stephen Brown of Springbank Honey says New Zealand needs to change its approach to managing the disease and instead use tools like vaccines or antibiotics, as some other countries do. He says destruction of the hives is going to cost them millions.
The notice to burn all our honey seekers, that has absolutely been devastating. They made us burn over 10,000 boxes. Next year, when we don't have boxes for our honey crop, we're probably going to be losing over $5 to $6 million. Like, the loss of the boxes is one thing, but without the boxes to go on the hives, we won't have a honey crop. The money to replace this, there's no compensation.
We also spoke with Apiculture New Zealand's Chief Executive, Karen Koss. She says vaccines aren't approved yet in markets like the US, and the use of antibiotics would threaten export market access.
The last thing beekeepers want to get is AFB in their hives, but it is a community effort to stop the prevention and spread of AFB. So it's a tricky issue to deal with, but as a beekeeping community, there is absolute support for managing AFB as well as we can.
Now, Monique, you have an update on the Zespri kiwi fruit shipment that was infested with mice.
Yes, Zespri says 1.2 million trays of kiwi fruit on the ship docked in Belgium will be destroyed, with the total cost of the kiwi fruit and getting rid of it at about $34 million. The kiwi fruit marketer says since mice were discovered on the ship last month, it's tried sorting through the fruit to salvage as much as possible. But it abandoned that due to reputational and food safety concerns. The disposed fruit will now be turned into biofuel.
Across the Tasman now, Monique, and Australia's announced a phase-out of live sheep exports by sea.
Yes, the federal government's decided to phase out the trade over the next 4 years. National Farmers Federation President David Johinke says around 800,000 head of sheep, mostly from Western Australia, they're sent to the Middle East each year, its largest market, and the trade is worth around $123 million. He says processing plants would struggle to take any more product that's being diverted from live export.
We are struggling to maintain or process the amount of sheep already going through those facilities. Means that essentially a lot of farmers will get out of sheep. They will then obviously reduce the amount of wool being processed or shorn within Australia, and we'll see a turn to probably more monoculture, broadacre cropping as an alternative.
Meanwhile, here in New Zealand, the coalition government is planning to reverse a ban on live animal exports by sea, but the government says it would go out for public consultation first.
And lastly, an update on a company we've been following for a while here at Country Life, Daisy Lab. They're involved in this possibly game-changing technology creating dairy-style products without the need for a cow. What's the latest?
This is the company which has been experimenting with technology known as precision fermentation. It's now been granted approval from the Environmental Protection Authority to scale up its production. Daisy Lab's founders say it's a critical step towards commercialising the animal-free dairy proteins to supply to food and beverage companies.
Watch this space. Thanks, Monique.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
You might have heard our story last time about Neil Chesterton, a vet who specialises in lameness in dairy cows. We promised you Chapter 2 of his adventures. He and his family have had a few of those, including several years on 2 different assignments, first with the United Nations on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and later for a charity in Afghanistan helping farm animals, farmers and opium addicts. Sally sat down with Neil and his wife Sandra Chesterton to hear more.
Back in 1990, I got written to by a friend of ours who was living on the border of Afghanistan, and she knew a project there that was desperate to have a vet training Afghan farmers. They were bringing them across the border and teaching them about treating cows and vaccinating and stuff. And so Sandra said to me one day, well, why don't we go? And I said, we've got 5 kids. We can't go to a place like that. And she said, well, we're homeschooling. But I said, what happens if it just doesn't work out? She said, well, we could come back home again, couldn't we? And so because of her enthusiasm, I'd been 17 years at the vet practice. Let's have a change. We packed them all up and went to Pakistan on the border for 3 years and trained young farmers about treating all things in cows. And Afghan vets did the theory stuff in another lesson. I ran a clinic.
So the practical stuff.
The practical stuff, you're right. We had 6 vets that went back into Afghanistan. I went with them just to set them up at the end of the 3-year training. And I said, one day I'd love to come here. And 10 years later, in the year 2000, Sandra and I and our 2 youngest boys, who were still at home, we went and lived inside Afghanistan, right up the north of Afghanistan near China, and lived there for 2 years. I got a job working with opium addicts. So I knew nothing about drugs, luckily, but I was in the office and we had doctors and nurses went to villages helping the addicts. It's such a huge problem up there. But I had time in between to go and see my vets, go out, give them more training, go out and watch them vaccinate and watch them treat cows.
And how were they getting on?
It was amazing. Of the 6 that we trained, 5 were still with us. They just so impressed me. They were farmers, and they were we called them paravets, not real vets, but paravets.
What sort of problems were they dealing with?
A lot of their stuff was just simply vaccinating to stop dying of blackleg and all the anthrax and all the diseases that were up there, drenching them for worms and that. And then they had animals that were lame, but they had animals that were sick.
You had an interesting time getting out of Afghanistan, didn't you? Because you were there at a very poignant time.
We went over there in 2000, we went, and then September the 11th, 2001 happened.
9/11.
9/11. We were living right up near China, up that end. The interesting thing, we lived in the only province that the Taliban hasn't taken over. So in the year 2000, they were getting close to us. They were 50 kilometres away. So September the 11th came, and every other Westerner got kicked out of, the Taliban kicked them all out of the rest of Afghanistan. Just we were there, not taken over by the Taliban yet.
Yeah, most of them escaped via Russia or Tajikistan, and through there. Their particular organisations helped them. We would have to go back through Pakistan, and normally once or twice a week there was a UN aeroplane that flew. They also took families, so we were thinking, well, when it's time to go, we'll just hop on the UN plane and fly back to Peshawar. However, the Taliban said, well, if we see a UN plane, we're going to shoot it down. So UN decided their insurance wasn't going to cover that. And then winter started coming on. So the only route out would be over the mountains. So that was the route we would have to take. The earlier the better. So we drove north and hired horses. And then we got horses and went on horseback over the mountains, which is nice adventure.
We got over the border. There was tension about the Taliban in all that area, so that they said just be secretly go. So we found a bus that was going, and we headed off sort of half hiding, and we got down the road and the bus broke down. So we were on the side of the road so everybody could see that these Westerners were there. There we were. But in the end, they got the bus going and we got back to Pakistan.
Did you have to go in some sort of disguise?
We dressed like locals anyway.
He looks very local. He had a beard.
I always wore beard and stuff there.
Yep. The boys spoke the local language quite well.
Yeah.
And they looked just like local people.
The crazy thing was that I thought, Sandra, there's stuff I hadn't given money to some of the guys. I wanted to take some food for some others. And so I got a horse back over the mountains, back in, and went and sort of finished off the project properly. Yeah, we were coming time for us to go anyway, but I didn't want to feel I've run away from it. And by then the Taliban were being held back. And one morning I woke up and saw big circles in the sky where the US planes were circling around and bombing the Taliban that were 50 kilometres away.
You've travelled to many other places with your work, haven't you? Especially with the lameness work in cattle that you do.
Sandra worked it out, 30 different countries.
And you say you've learnt a lot from your overseas travels. What sort of things have you learnt?
That there's many people who are employed in this job and hate it, but have to do it.
In the vet job or in farming?
In farming, yeah. And so a lot of the stuff we've learnt is about people and how to teach them, like Sandra said, teach them about cow behaviour. So instead of just looking and say these cows are stupid animals, we say no, they're not. You give them space and you watch what they do. And so it changed their job. We loved the people part. So even if we couldn't solve some of their cow stuff, you know, their nutrition and all those things, which I don't know nothing about, but the people could start to enjoy the job. And then when they enjoy the job, the cows are less afraid. And, you know, I remember one Jersey farm we went to, where were they, Sandra? The cows were so afraid of people because of the way they used the gates and the way they shouted at them and they got angry with them. And, you know, so we could go and teach them, hey, just ease back on that. You'll end up with better cow flow. It mightn't have anything to do with lameness, but your job will be better. And so we got a bit of a known for that cow psychology stuff.
Are you going to be slowing down anytime soon?
I'm really slowing down. I'm not doing anything else above the hoof. It's great. The good thing about just doing lameness, you don't have to do it at midnight. It's not emergency stuff. So I leave all the hard work to the real vets. I'm just the cow vet. And so still totally enjoying it.
Neil and Sandra Chesterton. And Sandra's book about Neil's exploits will be sent off to the winner of the competition we've been running. And we'll let you know the result of that competition at the end of the show.
It's early autumn and we're heading to a tunnel house heaving with late harvest tomatoes and a flourishing vine. It's part of a mara kai, a Maori food garden, where whānau are getting their hands in the soil and finding out how to grow food and other things in their own backyards. Oh my goodness, here we are.
Okay,
Look
so
at this.
Right at
the vine is just clambering up there, isn't it?
Giant hue, we call it, which is a traditional water bottle or a vessel that carried, our tupuna used to carry their preserved food.
I'm chatting with Pounamu Skelton and we're looking at one of the crops she's been growing in the warmth of the tunnel house, protected from frost and winds blowing in off the northern Taranaki coast. Let's describe it because it is quite an unusual shape, isn't it?
Yes, it's a bottle gourd, they call it. I'll just show you, pull the leaf away so you can see it. Quite gorgeous. So that's not finished doing its thing yet, and it's very green, so there's a curation period where you have to dry them, and then if you're going to use it to preserve food in, obviously you'd take the neck off and put your food inside, probably be preserved in fat.
And what would you use that for nowadays?
Oh, I just love growing them, and then I give them to artists to do wonderful things with.
Not to be eaten?
No, we don't eat these. I just grow them because I think to preserve a culture you have to, do it. You actually have to enact it.
So the gourd and its ancient uses are among crops and growing techniques Pounamu and her team are using in their teaching.
This land is called Te Rauorongo, so it's a papakainga, which means our family is living on this land and will do forever and more, intergenerational living. So that includes my elderly parents and myself, and then often there's family members staying. Ko Tiatiawa tōku iwi, so I'm from the northern tribes of Taranaki, Tiatiawa. Ngāti Rahiri is the hapu on my dad's side, which is literally this area here. So we have come back to tribal lands. We're on the tongi or the boundary of Ngāti Mutunga and Tiatiawa. We are creating a Māori food farm, or a place which can empower our people to go back to growing food and becoming gardeners again. So I come from a long line of gardeners, and this place is a space to be able to live my dreams, really, to showcase the principles of huaparakore and the way and the style that we grow kai.
And we'll just explain huaparakore. It's organic gardening the Maori way.
Yes, so Te Waka Kaiora is the kaitiaki of huaparakore. And so it's a framework of 6 principles. So really we do no harm to the land. We understand the stories of the land, the whakapapa of the seed, whakapapa of the person who's growing food. And it's a place where you can tell your story about your food. So not just about food, but really the whole embrace of the process of growing that food. So it is kai atua, or it's a pure product at the end.
And on this block of land, you host wānanga or some courses for people to learn more.
Most weekends there's people here doing wānanga. So a program that's run through, that I created actually, called Tātai Tangata ki te Whenua, which 3 iwi and Taranaki are part of. So whānau come through here, do the practical part of growing kai. So hands-on, in the soil, raising the seeds, making compost together, growing kai together, laughing together, eating together.
About 270 whānau, mostly urban-based, have been through the course. They learn online during the week and then come here at the weekends to get their hands in the soil and put the concepts into practice. The hope is they can then replicate what they've learnt in their own gardens and grow their own kai.
So we did an evaluation 2 seasons ago now, And the average price of money saved was $60 a week for a household. Māori households are larger. They have between 5 and 8 people in them. If they start growing food as a household, then they get more connection with the environment because you go outside. A lot of parents are talking about they have better relationships with their children because their children help in the garden. So it's a different kind of dynamic, you can communicate and do something together. So good for family dynamics. Plus they get to eat healthier food, which they've grown. So there's a connection back to the food rather than a disconnection from a supermarket. So it really does hit on many levels.
Let's wander through, shall we?
Shall we?
Tell me what you've got here.
We've got an 18-metre tunnel house, which was a gift from Te Kāhui o Taranaki, our iwi. Well, I spend most of winter in here doing seedlings for the program. So when we launch in spring, everyone's able to receive seedlings. And then actually you'll see the tomatoes and the chilies and the aubergines and the hue, the gourd, they're just enormous. Wow. Because they've been grown in a warm space.
And this is the right time to be looking at your harvest, I guess.
Oh yeah, we've been harvesting for weeks. So,
have you got an oversupply? What happens to that?
Well, I've been busy, and actually the whole family's been busy preserving. So, we'll have a night session of preserving peaches and making chutneys, and because it's quite a lot of work, to be fair, to actually get into jars. So this is starting to dry herbs out here. So this is all basil. And so I'm just experimenting. This is my place to play, and experiment, dry things out, sunflower seeds. So we'll save that seed for next season. I guess the purpose of this is to close the loop so you have seed for next year and the year after, and I can actually give some of that away.
Do you find there's a lack of knowledge out there, or do you find that people have a sort of grain of knowledge and they just want to take it and embellish it and get to know more?
Some people really take to it. I think what growing food does, it brings out a memory from grandparents, parents, great-grandparents, and people really take to certain areas, whether it's seed sowing or the preserving or the growing.
Now, you told me earlier that you are flying the flag for food sovereignty in Taranaki.
Oh, me and others.
But that's your kind of MO, your modus operandi, isn't it? It's what you love.
I've been in the scene for a long time with Te Waka Kaiora, and that's one of our kind of purposes to bring food systems back into local hands. Because, we can grow food that's relevant to our climate, and we could distribute food locally, rather than the goal being to grow food for export, so it goes overseas. Makes no sense to my brain. So everything I do is always geared up to grow food for local economy, or just for, at the moment it's to educate our people so they can have food on their table.
And have any of your students taken it to another level and gone commercial with their food growing?
Not so much in the Māori space yet. However, they've gone from just a very small garden to now a full backyard and around the corner garden, so their self-sufficiency has increased.
And what about health outcomes?
Gardening has a lot of benefits for mental health. And for me too, this is where I come when I need some space in my head to, reduce the bandwidth of information that we carry. I've had a lot of outcomes of people coming off methamphetamine through gardening, which has been profound. An unexpected outcome, and also reduction of anxiety in adults. That's been a very common health benefit.
Why do you think that they're able to get off meth through gardening?
Yeah, maybe it's because it's a positive environment, because it's a peaceful environment. So in Te Ao Māori, we talk about the atua of Rongo Mātāne, so the god of peace and hospitality. So your hands are busy, right, when you're gardening. Māori are generally quite kinesthetic. So I think when your hands are busy, your brain can rest. There's a sense of peace that comes There's a sense of well-being that occurs. I've been observing it for the last 8 years. I watch people come in quite tense and stressed, and then they leave very relaxed and kind of a happiness. So I think people come back into balance when they're in the mara. Plus you get to eat good food. So that helps because you can be nourished, and not need other stimulants. Okay.
There's plenty of variety here, including citrus, a kumara garden and a new berry house built by Pounamu's 81-year-old father. Do your parents get involved with the gardening?
So Dad's very involved in planning, like what's next. So we've only been here 15 months. We've had a big dream and vision to really get this place humming. So Dad's been instrumental in building all of the structures, helping with the vision. And Mum is amazing at the harvest. I just bring baskets in and she'll clean them up. She's just taught me how to do all the peaches, because I remember this stuff as a child, but I kind of was too busy eating than learning how to do it.
And she's got all that stored away knowledge, I suppose, and a generation before of what they were doing with their food.
Absolutely, it's wonderful. I think everyone's got their role.
Will you have more people coming? You say it's papakainga. Yes. So will you have more homes being built here as well?
Yes, I'm waiting for that money to drop down. I'm manifesting it. Really would love to be able to provide a place for retreating. So, like busy executive people who need to come and reconnect back to whenua. I'd love to be able to provide a space for that. I'm going to introduce you to our little lambs, which now look like sheep. We hand raise them.
They're looking very healthy. Little round tummies.
Now they're little round tummy and probably not lambs anymore. Hello. Hello.
They are all coming to see you. Have you got some food for them, Pounamu?
I haven't, but hopefully you remember us. Hello. So this garden, this is where I wanted Farron to join us, because this is the Kaioranga garden. Kaioranga is a level 3 and level 4 program out of Te Whare Wānanga or Awanuiarangi. And so this garden is their teaching garden. Groups come through every month and they garden in here and they learn how to grow food.
So it's not so much about production, but more about experimentation?
Absolutely. And they've made everything here, including the pallet fence that we're standing beside. So often it was our Maori woman that had never used a power tool, and they learned how to build basic things like the fencing, that little shed that was built. They built that out of recycled materials, the composting system over here.
The water system
The water system they put in. Yeah. So it's sort of, I call it the showcase garden, but actually the students were learning and doing, and yeah, it's been very productive. What happens here is there's a lot of goodwill comes, a lot of koha, we call it, gifting. So this beautiful compost bin came from Parakuri, which is the Maori Zero Waste organisation. And I really love it. It smells of beeswax.
I can smell it already. Even in that wind.
Yeah.
Lift it up. Let's have a look. What's in there? Ooh.
Okay, so, oopsie. So my students made the contents for it. When they come back in a couple of weeks, we'll turn it and they can just see the magic of creating soil, because we need to grow more soil. We're just moving into the kamu garden. You know, Māori love kamu, goes great in a boil up. So actually this whole space was full of kamu less than 2 weeks ago, actually.
Some people may not be familiar with kamu.
Oh, it's a type of marrow. So we like them when they're small. Just trying to look around to see if there's any. So that's when, like my mum loves it when it's small, not so much when it gets big like a pumpkin. They're like baby food, you know. You cut them up and add them to a boil up, or I like them sort of lightly fried in butter or salt.
Roasted and they caramelise, the tops of them caramelise,
it's really
and it's
sweet.
A delicious buttery flavour.
It's very sweet. So actually most of this has just gone back out to kaumatua in our community. Yeah, we've eaten a few, but mainly I've just given most of it away. And so Dad's like, no, we're definitely doing Kamul next year, because actually he saw the joy of the gifting, and we've got the space where they can just run. We've had box loads. And so, yeah, I'll take boxes up to the iwi offices and over to kaumatua groups, just so actually they can enjoy a taste of what they've had in the past, you know. So it brings joy, which is, you know, I'm all into doing that. Let's bring joy to people's lives through food.
Pounamu Skelton at the family Mara near Waitara in Taranaki.
I'm John Whittaker, the flower man from Fielding, and you're listening to Country Life at RNZ National.
We're off to a farm in northern Wairarapa now. There's more than meets the eye to this family dairy farm though. An on-farm museum right in the centre offers a unique look at farm life over the last century and tracks the family's pioneering spirit.
We're here at Fernhill, a dairy farm in the foothills of the Tararuas. Here, I'm meeting former dock ranger Jason Christensen.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself? That's good. Shall we go inside? Yeah.
Yep. His family has been on the land for close to 150 years.
We're on Fernhill, which is the original family farm, which was originally purchased in 1879 and has grown throughout the years ever since. And we've now got 536 hectares on the main block, and we've got a 26 hectare block a little bit further up the road, just a cut and carry block, only 10 k's up the road, so yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the special family connection to the whenua here? 150 years almost?
Almost, yeah, it's getting close to that, yep. Yeah, it's a pretty special spot, and I'm the 5th generation, and my niece is the 6th generation who's been helping out on farm with calf rearing and things like that as well. So yeah, it was one of those earlier blocks that were divvied up in the original land settlement days in the early obviously 1800s, and we've stayed here ever since.
Your great-great-granddad from Denmark, is it?
Yes, Denmark, yep, we're Danish.
Before taking on the family farm, Jason worked for the Department of Conservation. The experience left a lasting impression on Jason, with Fernhill widely regarded for its environmental and conservation efforts on farm.
I suppose a lot of that conservation side of things is pretty much ingrained in me, I suppose, in some ways, or indoctrinated as we used to call it. And we've done a lot of planting and fencing off all the riparian waterways, and we've created 7 QE2 covenants on the farm, all that side of things. We've still got, we want to create a whole lot more shelter and shade. So it's that whole biodiversity. You know, we've got some rare mudfish on the new block that we bought, and so stock had access to some of those, so we've now fenced all those off and protecting those. So yeah, it's you've got to be able to be profitable to be able to afford the green component. So not everything can happen overnight, and yeah, but it will happen over time. So
Can we go see some of it?
We certainly can.
We hop in the ute and drive through the farm, along limestone laneways, past fenced-off waterways and a block of QE2 land. A stand of kahikatea trees sit alongside fern, totara and cabbage trees.
Is it largely quite flat, a little bit of rolling?
Yeah, so this is a terrace up through here, and then this is our lower terrace through here, and then we've got a section over the road there as well. So it's about a 50-metre vertical drop from here down to the lowest paddock over the road. And it is flat, so it is flat with the 3 terraces here really. It's also down here is quite stony, whereas up here is the more fertile type soil.
Beneath the Tararua Ranges, the area is usually quite green with higher rainfall, but that is changing slightly.
And generally quite summer safe, I'd imagine? Or
They say we're summer safe.
It's not been your experience,
but it's not necessarily the summer safe anymore, I don't think. I mean, we're green, don't get me wrong. We are still green compared to lower down the valley, but it's not growing. We're starting to do now. We had a bit of rain over the weekend. We've probably been getting the average rainfall, but we've been getting a lot more wind. Like this year, it's just been constant wind. You get that rain and it just keeps that grass ticking over, and then it dries out, you know, and then it's before you get the next lot. So it's sort of, I suppose, it's a bit of a climate change. So Whether we continue to be semi-summer safe, time will tell, I suppose, over the longer term.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see all the creek here has been planted. It just started to run again yesterday after the rain. We've used manukas there because manukas actually absorb a lot more nutrients and uptake out of the ecosystem. So it helps to purify the water.
Do you have any hives on the farm at all?
So there are beehives on the farm. So there's Kintail, got some hives over the road, and then Totra Park honey, you've got the hives out the back, which are keeping for the native honey. No money in manuka at the moment, so they've sort of pulled away from that and doing the native honey.
From the top of the farm, the scale of the conservation efforts and plantings is evident.
Do you want to talk me through what we're looking at here, Jason?
So we've got a QE2 covenant there on the hill that we fenced off, and it's got a couple of lovely big rata trees that grow in it, and we've actually planted a few more up at the top just to fill in a couple of gaps. And then we're looking down on the Waipoua River, and we've planted some redwoods in the bottom there to create a bit of shade and shelter, primarily originally for the cows and the riparian zone. But also now, as part of our catchment group, we've discovered heat is actually the biggest thing for our catchment issues. So the shading on the rivers is probably key along there, because there's a section a little bit further down. You can just see some of the trees further down where there's a kilometre of waterway was actually completely in the shade, and the water temperature dropped 1.5 degrees over that distance in the summer months. So one of the things when we did our catchment tour, we were taking water samples and temperature all the way down, and temperature was a big thing that we notice as our catchment is probably our biggest issue up here, is the water temperature.
I suppose looking at all of this planting here, it represents many years worth of work?
It does, yes it does, yep. No, it doesn't grow overnight, so those Douglas fir that are along the waterway there, they were planted in 2009, so it's taken a wee while for them to get up and get established, and now we're doing a little bit of trimming just to keep them off the fence, so which is a good thing.
It was a love of tramping that lured Jason into the world of conservation, trading the milking shed for the remote Mana Island.
I like tramping. That's my sort of was hobby at the time, and like being in the outdoors. And a friend of mine actually worked for Doc at the time and said, "Oh, there's this job coming up. You should apply for it." So that's what I did. And 6 months later, I was there, and was primarily based out on Mana Island originally, and then worked out of the Waikanai area office.
Mana Island is a 217-hectare bird sanctuary off the Kapiti coast. It's home to many native and endangered species.
Every day was different. It's a bit like farming, It varies from day to day. So, one day you can be greeting visitors and talking to them and doing guided walks, and then another day you'll be head down, bum up, doing a lot of maintenance and bits and pieces. So, a whole raft of different skills, species work. I was a skipper on the boat at that stage as well, so we did a lot of boating, our own boating for gear and supplies and things. So, it was a whole raft of different jobs.
What was it that eventually drew you back to the family farm and to dairying?
The job I was doing at the end was in the Kapiti area office, and they were just changing some of the roles around, and I was about to become office bound in my new role, and I'm afraid I'm not an office person. I was in there enough as it was, and I decided that it was time to give it a go, and Dad's worker was leaving at the time, and Dad was 65, so he was sort of thinking about retiring, so I thought, well, if ever going to come home to the farm, now's the time to give it a go. And came home for the quiet life, and then we went and bought the neighbouring farm, and we suddenly went from 85 hectares to 536 hectares now. So
big step up.
A big step up, yeah.
No regrets. You're still here, obviously.
I'm still here. Yep. No regrets, and probably the best decision we've ever made. So we are now a closed herd, and everything stays on farm. So we don't have to graze off and all the rest of it. So got great benefit from that side of things.
Jason still maintains a special connection to Mana Island off the Kapiti coast and tries to get out there when he needs a break from farm life.
I try to, so I haven't been for a couple of years now, but hoping to get back there this year, so it should be really neat. I mean, it was home for nearly a third of my life at the time, so I know it was a great spot.
Was it hard being on such a remote island, I suppose?
Yes and no. Remote when you wanted and had to get to places on the mainland for a concert or whatever when the sea was too rough and you couldn't go anywhere. Yes, it was hard, but great little spot. There was at least 2 of us permanently based there, as well as all the seasonal workers and volunteers. So there was, in the middle of winter, it was our busiest time. There was 30 visitors every day coming to help plant trees and stuff. So it was different, but it was neat.
Yeah. And obviously a nice excuse to be able to get off farm sometimes, I imagine, now, to
yes, it is. Yep.
pay to visit.
Yep. No, that's for sure. So, awesome to see all the fruits of everybody's volunteer labour coming away and all that side of things, yeah. So, awesome.
There's a piece of Mana Island on farm as well.
So some of all the plantings we're doing now, we're using the old Mana Island bait stations, which are the Onova coil tubes, and cut to length, and then we use those to protect the plants not only from the pukeko but also rabbits and hares from chewing them off, and it just gives them a good head start, because even on these drier summer days, when you do get a bit of a dew in the morning, you're getting that dew building on both sides of the tube, inside and out, and that just runs down and keeps a bit of moisture in the plants as well.
And your work in conservation, how's that influenced how you wanted to do things when you came back to the family farm?
I suppose got a bit of a green or conservation ethics, which has had a reasonable sort of influence, I suppose. We were, Dad sort of started early on fencing off the rivers and bits and pieces.
Don't worry, we'll meet Dad Henry soon. He's your typical old-school dairy farmer, and quite the collector. But back to Fernhill's environmental efforts. The family legacy and role as caretakers of this whenua is a key part of their decision-making.
We're actually joined the Nestle project with Fonterra, which is looking at our greenhouse gases going forward, and a lot of these plantings and QE2 covenants and retired bush that's out behind us there, that will all help to potentially help offset some of our greenhouse gases. I guess that's partly the reason that we probably bought this extra block, which did have a lot of hill country in it, and we have got our beef unit going as well, but some of those non-productive areas we've been able to retire and let that regeneration sort of happen, and whether it goes into an ETS or a carbon offset, it's one of those things that's in our back of our mind all the time, that's for sure.
We talk about this being a multi-generation farm. You're the 5th, your niece is the 6th.
Yep.
6th generation on the property. What do you hope for the property for the next generation that comes on?
Well, hopefully it continues in the family, and all we're trying to do is we're just guardians of the land at the moment, and we can just hope that everything we're doing is to improve it. My grandfather used to come into the retail nursery when I was there and said, "Why are we growing manuka? I've spent my life pulling the manuka out," and I mean, even today he'd cringe at what we've done, and my uncle, who owned this bit of the land, spent years and years clearing it of all the bush and scrub and things, but it's about enhancing your landscape. Our farm, you don't see too many straight lines in our plantings, and that we're sort of curves and trying to create nature. Nature doesn't go in straight lines, it curves around, and same as your rivers, they're all swales, and trying to replicate that a little bit, but also retaining all the good productive land for pasture growth and things like that. But it's not a negative having all your riparian plantings, because what we're looking at down there, you can imagine on a strong northwest day when the wind's and raining, the cows are on the other side nice and sheltered and protected. So a lot of the riparian plantings are doing that from my point of view. They're helping with the animal welfare side.
Mm-hmm. We head along to go and see some of the girls as they're being fed out. The happy mob of brown and gold Jersey cows also speak to the high regard for animal welfare.
We get the silage from out the back, bring forward to feed out to the cows. The morning feed.
Oh, happy girls.
Yeah, they will be once that arrives.
As they file past me, I can see the cows are all wearing smart collars. Smart collars work much like smart watches for people, providing helpful information for farmers about everything from feeding and health to mating and more. Adopting the technology has been a game changer, Jason says.
So it gives us our rumination data, and also gives us all their health warnings and things like that. So if they're feeling distressed or if they're feeling sick, we get alerts that something's not right outside their norm. We also use them for mating as well. So it picks up when the cows are cycling, and we'll automatically draft them out ready for the AI technician on the morning. So we've had them since 2011. Most of our genetics is Jersey, so we're about 70% Jersey herd at the moment. We've got a handful of Friesians, but the rest are Kiwi cross.
And what's the rationale behind that decision making?
So we're part of the sire proving scheme with LIC, so we're helping to build those genetics early on. So we're doing a lot of that earlier testing before they actually hit the market as in the semen. And what we were finding is when we're doing the Kiwi crosses, those genetics were getting heavier and heavier. So because we're a high rainfall zone, we were having to think about our footprint on the ground and impact zone for pugging and things like that in the winter. So going to the Jersey, and even those are still going to be building heavier frame, but they are a lighter animal on our soils. So that's sort of the reason we've gone to the Jersey side.
What ways are you adapting to climate change or integrating plans for a changing climate in your farming operation?
Well, I suppose by going to the Jersey, so if we're going to get wetter winters potentially, not necessarily colder but wetter, then they're a lighter footprint on the soil. But also, if we're getting hotter summers, the Jersey cow tolerates the heat a lot more than a Kiwi cross or a Friesian, for example, or black cow. So those are some of the things we're adapting here. We've planted a lot of shelter belts, and we want to plant a lot more shade trees as well going forward in the future.
Much of the family's long history is captured in the Mount Bruce Pioneer Museum, located in the heart of the farm. The museum was started by Jason's father Henry, who takes us around the collection. He's a bit shy around the microphone, but sharp as a tack when it comes to what each of the items was once used for. So, Henry, what was it that led you to start this collection here?
Said one day we shouldn't be throwing their milk machines away.
And so they just started
Yep.
gathering in a shed somewhere.
Yeah.
And when did the collection turn into a museum?
86.
What did you start with? What did you start collecting initially?
Milk machines.
And that was because you were a dairy farmer? Or
Probably was.
do you think the machines we have today make it a little bit easier?
I think so.
A labyrinth of rooms in an old farm shed house hundreds of agricultural tools and machines from the last century. Stacks of tractor parts, mower add-ons, and of course, milking machines. There's even a working model where people can try their own hand at pedal milking.
Sit on and pedal it.
And so that would draw the milk from the udders.
That's right.
Why was it that you opened the museum? To share these things with people?
That's right.
What have people said to you as they've come through?
Wow.
Certainly, wow. It's quite the collection.
There's also rooms dedicated to life indoors, with various interactive displays, including a telephone exchange, grocery store, working washing machine, and crank gramophone.
Collection doesn't stop. Keeps going.
Keep going, all right.
Should we keep going this way?
Yep.
What else have we got through here, Henry?
Telephone exchange.
Oh, telephone exchange.
The operator would plug you into there. Rings through.
Do you have a favourite section yourself, Jason, at all? Or?
No, not really.
Do you know,
spend enough time in here.
Do you know what a lot of the things are, or is it
I
also...
know what they're from, yes.
Yeah.
What they've been used for. Yeah, that's correct.
How many items are in the collection?
Don't know.
You don't know? Never counted?
Tens of thousands.
Sounds about right.
The oldest items will be over 100 years old.
Over 100 years old. Any from the original farm?
No.
Nothing from the family farm. You guys have been here a very long time too yourselves, though, I hear.
Yep.
Almost 150 years.
Almost.
What do you make of how Jason's managing the farm these days?
Good as gold.
Thanks, Henry. The museum captures a unique part of Aotearoa's dairy history and is still open to visitors. So Dad Henry approves. But to wrap up, I ask Jason what he thinks his great-great-granddad, who who founded the farm, would make of Jason's innovations and use of technology.
I'm sure he would be proud that the farm is still in the family and still, dairy farming like he was back in the day. But like all those things, the advancements in technology and information gathering and Dad's era has just, advanced so much. And from back then even, the early cars and things like that, all that sort of side of things. The technology has advanced really in the last 100 years. Tenfold, hasn't it? And whether it does the same in the next 100 years, who knows?
And so things like the Pioneer Museum, you will be carrying on for the next generation as well?
Yes,
in one
it'll
form?
It'll be here for some time. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
That was Jason Christensen and his dad, Henry.
And now to the results of our competition for the book Sandra Chesterton wrote about her husband Neil's work as a vet, called Lame Stories from the Vet from Inglewood. We had quite a few entries, but the answer we were after was 50 bale rotary dairy shed. And the winner is Ian Benefield. You can go back and listen to the story by following our podcast or checking out the archive on our webpage. Thanks for emailing with all your feedback. We love hearing from you. Our email address is country@rnz.co.nz if you have any ideas of stories we can cover. I'm really looking forward to heading to the far north soon, so let me know if you have any tips.
And go the Nix. Have a great weekend. Bye now.
Ka kite.